Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you back to the Dynamic Decisions podcast, where we explore the strategies that drive successful decision making in the world of business. Why? Because the best decisions come from great conversations. I'm your host, Teasha Cable, CEO of C Model Data. And today we have a multi-hyphenate executive who's transformed a break-even industrial manufacturer into a highly profitable infrastructure leader while maintaining a parallel career as a professional actor. His name is Sean Greenhouse. He's the Chief Operating Officer at Lenita Design and Manufacturing Corporation, located in Buffalo, New York. So, Sean, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show. Tell us more about you and your fascinating sort of pattern and connected career and
Sure.
all about Lenita.
Thank you so much for having me. My career trajectory has definitely been a little bit unorthodox. And I fell into this business completely by accident. I don't have an engineering degree. I don't have a manufacturing background. In fact, I was a debt collector before I joined Lenita. I had just finished my master's, and by coincidence, I happened to run into a gentleman about 15 years ago who had just moved to the Western New York area. Lenita Design and Manufacturing was originally from Guelph, Ontario, and they had 15,000 square feet in Guelph. And that the gentleman that is the current owner was looking to expand in 2008, 2009, and to expand to 90,000 square feet in Ontario would have been very pricey. So he could see the work coming in the United States and realized he needed to be here. So Buffalo came up, and he decided to move the company to Buffalo. So he did in 2010. So we kept our engineering office in Guelph, Ontario, and moved the manufacturing to Buffalo. So we were in both countries, but only an hour and a half apart. So he built a team, early on, but the team that he put together didn't necessarily understand the product that we make. And so in middle of 2012, he wanted to grow, and he found me and was looking to add a sales department. So he asked me if I wanted to do sales. I had just finished my master's degree, and I was looking to grow kind of more as a person. So the way that it was presented to me was, well, you have the sales opportunity. We're a small company. We're willing to grow. Okay. All right. It's a manufacturing. I kind of went into it by faith. Didn't really know the product, didn't know anything. I got into it, and I joined as a sales and client relations manager. And about 3 months into my tenure here, a gentleman passed on the floor while working. And about 6 months into it, I realized the company was definitely not ready to grow. It was
Yeah.
actually the complete opposite.
Hmm.
So I was like, well, maybe that's okay. We'll see where this goes. I'm still learning the business. It's much more long-term business, and debt collections is very, very short turnaround. It's what you're doing month in and month out, quarterly, annually. It's about the numbers that you're hitting. It's a much more high-paced, day in and day out grind. And then this manufacturing that I got into, especially the manufacturing we do, our projects are 1.5 to 4 years long. So the mindset and the mentality is completely different than where I had come from. So I got to be patient with this, even though the company isn't really where it's at, what was pitched to me. Let me give this some time. So I did.
I
Um,
love it.
I keep going at it. I keep bringing in all these opportunities. I'm flying around the country and so on. But I'm realizing the company really can't keep up with how much I can bring in. It just wasn't positioned to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm continuing to go here, and then around the end of 2014 or so, come to find out that the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. We were about a week to 2 weeks away from the bank calling the line. Fortunately, I had just when I got a pretty substantial order, we were able to get some favorable payment terms, call the bank off. And then during this process, the owner asked me if I would be interested in getting involved in human resources.
Mm.
And of course, at this point, the company look, we're on the brink of bankruptcy. We're not doing well. But the way that I saw it was, at this point, this was the end of 2014, 2015. in 9, I had decided to give up drinking and using drugs.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, because when this HR position was presented to me, I have to go lay off like 80% of the shop.
Mhm.
So when this was presented to me, I could see that this was going to become a turnaround situation. And I thought to myself, if I could turn around my own life,
Come on.
I could turn around a company.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's
And
good.
so, because when a company's failing, right, they, it- no banks want to talk to you, no lenders want to talk to you. You have a very rough culture because nobody wants to work for you because you can't afford to pay them much. Your reputation in the community is terrible. And then obviously your quality of your product is terrible. So outside your four walls, your reputation's poor. Inside of your four walls, your reputation's poor. You're like, oh man, this is going to be, a heavy lift because you can't, when you're at that point, you have no budget for a sales department. You have no budget for an HR department. It's bootstrapping it in street fighting, basically.
Mhm. Grind it out.
Right. To
Yeah.
dig your way out. So I slowly we got the work in and then slowly started to rebuild, added a few people here, a few people there. Something that I realized that was really getting in the way of Lenita's ability to grow was we were focused on trying to do too many things at once. So Lenita had originally serviced the automotive industry. So we did a lot of hydraulic press work, a lot of heavy crown fabrications, a product that was like an 8 to 12 week lead time item. You order a whack of steel, you pound it out, and then you ship it out. Now, the hydro work is a lot more sophisticated. I prefaced earlier, it's about the projects are anywhere from a year and a half to 4 years long. There's a lot more sophistication to them. There's a lot more overhead. There's a lot more oversight from a QC. I mean, from a QC perspective, there's just so much more involved. But
Right.
that's where the opportunity laid because there was only so many people
Who can do that?
who do it. Now,
That's right.
Lenita was trying to do this automotive work. Lenita was trying to do this side blasting and painting work because we have our own sandblast and painting booth. We were trying to do machinery repair rebuild work. We were trying to do crane services work. Lenita was
Mm.
trying to do 7 different things at once. And so one of the first things that I just decided to do when my role started to shift is I basically slashed the 6 things that were
Mhm.
a distraction because
Mhm.
they still required the same amount of project management overhead. They still required oversight and people but the margins didn't make sense.
Right.
The revenue didn't make sense from them. The time spent didn't make sense. So that was one of the first things I did was really, really narrowed our focus. I'm doing this while simultaneously trying to hire a staff. And when you're at that point, you can't afford guys at a high rate. So you're
Mhm.
hiring guys at 13. This was back in 2015 and 2016. So you're hiring guys at, 13, $14 an hour.
Wow.
And so you know what type of you know, talent you're gonna
Right.
get when you're
Right.
there. And it's just understanding that is the season that you're in.
Hmm.
All seasons, that's why there's 4 seasons. Oh, and you need all of them.
You need all of
And
them.
but understanding the long term. And so
Mhm.
along the way, we're slowly rebuilding.
Mhm.
About a couple years after I took on the HR, then I was asked if I would like to do the purchasing. I was like, "Sure." So I took on the purchasing because a big part of our business is the materials and so on, and
Mhm.
how we sell those, and then how we buy, and you know, a- and I'm glad I took it on because when I took it on, that was in the middle of it. That was the first time that tariffs got introduced. That was during President Trump's first term.
Mhm.
And, but that was the first time in like 20, 25 years that tariffs had been introduced. So it became a very good learning experience for me as a
Mhm.
person doing the buying to learn everything that was involved, how to manage it, how to work through it. Clearly, that prepared me for what's gone on now over the last year and a half to 2 years.
Sure.
So I was asked to do the purchasing. And along the way, I was the foreman. I was a project manager. I was out going and getting all the PPP funding, both rounds, working with
Mm.
accountants, CFOs, bankers. So long, my title was still sales and client relations. Our assistant manager goes to me. everyone's calling you and coming to you for everything. Your title can't be sales and client relations anymore. And that's how the chief operating officer title came about.
And it sounds like you're doing every bit of that work. This is fantastic. First of all, thank you for sharing that story in the way that you did and so transparently. I hope for our audience, if you're listening, you can see what a turnaround can actually look like, but it just requires an operational flow. Like you have to dig in to the details and figure out what's actually happening, where the problems actually are, face up to them, and then seek to solve them. All right, let me ask you this. So you manufacture water control equipment for hydroelectric dams. These are complex, engineered to order, heavy machinery projects with extremely long sales cycles, sometimes government contracting, and zero tolerance for failure because you're dealing with critical infrastructure. Can you give me a specific project where the technical complexity or the client expectations were really intense? When you're like bidding on multi-million dollar infrastructure work, how do you balance the pressure to win the contract and grow revenue against the operational reality that you have plant capacity, for example, or workforce capability limits and quality systems that have to execute flawlessly on these increasingly larger and more complex projects?
That's a very good question. And in fact, we just went through this. So I became the chief operating officer. My title changed to that around 2020. Of course, this is the beginning of the pandemic. And we went into the pandemic with about 12, 13 guys in our shop. Okay. Or around 14, 15. And then when it started, there was, very few bid opportunities, but we were fortunate. We won some work in 2020 to keep us going. And then in 2022, we were very, very fortunate. And, you'll see it on my bio. We were a company that was securing $7-8 million in contracts a year, maybe, 20, 30,000 man hours of shop labor and so on, kind of piddling around and just executing on that and, doing okay. And then all of a sudden the Inflation Reduction Act passed, the infrastructure bill passed, and all at the same time, hydropower started becoming a thing in the United States. And so it was all about positioning ourselves with a team to be able to execute. And so at the end of 2022, we secured two huge contracts
Hmm.
uh, that uh, gave us roughly a $35 million backlog and we went from, securing 20, 30,000 man hours of backlog a year to 180,000 man hours of backlog. But the nice thing about these projects is that they needed to be designed.
Hmm.
Because they needed to be designed, when we signed those contracts at the end of 2020, I knew we were going to have about a year and a half of design work, which gave me runway to be able to really to look at the man hours, see how the schedules were going to fall, and then how we were going to staff and when.
Hmm.
So it, from 2020, the beginning of 23, after we got those contracts signed to as we're going through the design, we ramped up from about 13 people in the shop to 30 from 2020, from the beginning of 2023 to early 2025. And we put in a second shift. And then how I knew that we were gonna be able to do these jobs simultaneously is by looking at the drawings, looking at the dimensions, looking at the sizes, understanding our crane capacity, understanding our workflow, and seeing, okay, we're doing these 30 by 15 container gates that they're big and they're complex, but they're not. But it's the welding call out isn't as intense as that we got. That the gates are smaller. They're 10 by 10, but they're heavy, but they're very complex. They're these caterpillar gates because they look like caterpillars. But these gates are going 100 feet underneath water. They have to be exact because the tolerance was basically like zero. We hired an outside machine shop that had the resources and the tools to be able to take the laser measurements and make sure that we were holding the tolerances. I was able to help us team up with some good sub vendors in the area that were able to support us. And by doing our homework, during the bidding process and then during the design process, that enable us to be able to do both projects side by side in our shop and having them both go through. I linked up with some vendors, especially for the machining, so we could have. You're talking a total of 32 gates and 47 hoists that we had to push through here in 2.5, 3 years. Yeah,
Wow, wow. That's amazing. Which to manage a pipeline that keeps your company sustainable to 2030, I can only imagine how you have to think about it over the course of that time and then
yeah,
maintain it. So listen, you oversee sales, marketing, HR, purchasing, and daily plant operations. That's really an integrated mandate. You got commercial strategy and shop floor execution in there. The tension
absolutely.
I see, right, is that you probably constantly have to deal with sales promises a delivery timeline that plant operations is like that's aggressive, or purchasing can't source the materials at the cost that sales may have projected it. How do you structure those conversations? What's your framework for determining when you push operations to stretch versus reset commercial expectations because the constraints are too real?
That's a great question. Along the way, we've gotten a lot smarter about how we write our contracts. We'll have in there anything that if we do our drawings during the drawing submittal stage or the design stage, the client takes too long to respond or comes back with, revise and resubmits and so on, that we extend the contract. So, because a lot of our work is up front. If we run it, we'll have clauses in there regarding material availability and stock, or if the materials go up because of tariffs or taxes, because we don't know. Like, we could bid because our work is all custom made to order. I could bid a job right now on May 22nd of 2026 at the steel prices that they are now. We may not get awarded the job until, say, September 22nd of 2026. But then, just because we're awarded the job, then we go into the design. We might not get our design approved until, February of 2027. So now you're talking 10 months could have elapsed by the time we're ready to go into procurement, and a lot can change politically. I mean, you're going to have a midterm this year. So, all sorts of things can happen in 10 months, 12 months, a year. So the first part of it is getting our commercial terms set and having
Mhm.
clauses in there that if the materials go up, you go in with a certain price, that we're entitled to a change order. And coming from that perspective, same thing with the schedule. If their material availability is low, then we are entitled to be able to extend the schedule or the timeline of the project. A lot of that is done up front. Now, when it comes to pushing the shop, that has to do with revenue and in our annual goals internally, and then what's possible and who we can hire and what we can do from an outsourcing perspective internally. There's all this stuff we can do up front, but then there is turning around. So we've been fortunate over the last few years. We have earned early incentives on deliveries. We've had those in our contracts too. Hey, if you deliver early, you can get an incentive. And we've done that. But it's a finesse, I would say, in terms of when to push the shop and when to pull back. And it's also understanding the customer needs, because there's so many other activities on a construction project other than our equipment that they could be delayed at site.
Right.
That, yes, we have these contractual dates, but those contractual dates may not necessarily be the need by dates, because they still have all of these other activities that are before our step that allows us more time than meets the eye. So there's a lot of moving parts, and to your point, I have to be involved. I have to know every angle that's going on so I can communicate. And it's only by the experience I've had in knowing these things allows me to also keep people's nerves kind of relaxed, because
Yes.
the project manager, their livelihoods are based on adhering to schedules and
That's right. On-time delivery. Yeah.
on-time delivery, and they want to
Yeah.
please the customer, and their
That's
hearts are
right.
in the place. And a plant manager or production manager, he's got his guys to manage, and he wants to make sure they're happy. He wants to make sure they're doing good work. But
That's right.
if something, he wants to get it right, which is
That's right.
the right mentality.
It is.
Getting it right could be at odds with the schedule that the project manager is issuing, and so it's a constant communication and understanding every angle of what's going on here,
Yeah.
be able to make informed decisions on a day in and day out basis. We'll sit down at the beginning of the year and we'll say, okay, here's our schedules based on what we have in our backlog now. Here's our goals. Here's what we're going to do monthly. But then, a guy quits, something comes up. There's a delay here, a delay there. How are we going to get back on track? And that's just constant communication and feedback. And if I'm not involved in all of it, guys will just keep going and thinking that, to their best of ability, but maybe they don't have the whole picture. And so it's very, very important to have the whole picture. It's, I say our projects are like a big complex puzzle. You know how you have, you do.
I do.
You empty the pieces out, you stand the box up, you do
your like, let me put the edges first, right?
and then you go corner by corner. Eventually, the puzzle's done.
Eventually you get done. I totally get it. So, hey, this is a quick question for our audience. What operational transformation created the biggest inflection point in your organization? Share your experiences with us on social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. Okay, let's talk about your acting for just a moment. So you're a professional SAG-AFTRA actor with credits in a Super Bowl commercial. You've got feature films, major campaigns. That is not a side hobby. That's a whole professional career. Okay. So what I want to know is most executives at your level would see that as some sort of distraction or time management impossibility. So when you're making decisions about how to allocate your time, your energy, and your focus between leading an industrial manufacturer's turnaround and pursuing professional acting opportunities, what's your framework? And honestly, how does maintaining that creative outlet make you a better COO?
Great question, and your last point is spot on. So, funny story about my acting. I got into it by accident, just like this work, but I got into it because as I could see my role was evolving with the COO position, I struggled with public speaking. So my wife at the time also had encouraged me to do some acting. I originally did it I took an intro to acting class, give me more confidence with my public speaking. So I did the 8-week class, and my acting coach was, "You're pretty good. You should come take some advanced classes." So this was in 2019. So I did, I took the class, I did my monologue, I took a couple advanced classes, and then COVID came. And I didn't think anything about it for a couple of years. And in 2021, my acting coach became a casting director for this movie called Cabrini, about Mother. They were filming in Buffalo. Yeah. Christina Delana plays Mother Cabrini. She's fantastic. And, there were some heavy hitters on that one. So that was my first time ever on a set.
Wow.
But I hadn't taken up to that point because there was COVID. I hadn't taken vacation in like 2 years. So I'll use it to jump on an acting set. And I fell in love. After that, I got an agent and started doing a few more things. I did some commercial work, some print work. I was on a billboard. Oh, I really like this. So I decided once COVID lifted and classes resumed, I decided to pursue it a little bit harder, but that came with a commitment. So because I did that, I hadn't taken a vacation in like 3 or 4 years. So in terms of time management and it not becoming a distraction, I do that at night. I do it, I work on it on the weekends. Now I'm selective about what I audition for, but mainly to your point about how it actually makes me a better COO, it gets me out of myself. And it allows my creative juices to really flow. Once you get a business to a certain point, it's one thing when you're going through the change and transformation as a company and you're digging out and you're overcoming this terrible reputation. And then once you rebuild the reputation and you get through all that darkness,
then you got to keep it.
Then it's more massaging and finesse and making tweaks here and there. But that takes to get to that point takes a lot of creativity. Then all of a sudden it kind of stops. But you don't want to stop creating. I think the constant creating keeps you on your toes and keeps you malleable. It keeps you flexible. It keeps you humble, especially because when you in acting, how many no calls you get, how much rejection you get. So it keeps you grounded, you see? And so it's the same mentality in acting. If you're grounded and real, you're going to be good. In business and work, if you're grounded and real and authentic, you'll connect with people. So there's a lot of parallels to being good at sales, to being a good leader, and to being a good actor. Basically, just be yourself.
Just be yourself.
Oh,
That's
and
good.
so many people, as they go into this work, they want the title badly, right? They want the title.
Hmm.
They want these things they think are going to make them successful, that they think are going to bring them happiness, that tend to be more external. But that's not what people really connect with.
It's not. My mom used to say, or she still does say all the time, you be yourself because everybody else is taken.
She's 100%. She's 100% right. So, and I've struggled, and I have struggled myself with questioning myself. Should I be doing this? Should I be going while I have this workload? I've had my own internal battles with that.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll reject an audition opportunity. I won't, I've become more selective, I
Yeah.
would say. But at the same time, I have been building a reputation there, and that led into last year having my first strong supporting role in a movie that just
Whoop.
won the audience award at a film festival in Florida. But I'd say that they're integrated.
Yeah. Well,
And
congratulations. Yeah.
thank you.
Um, yeah, congratulations. Okay, here is the last segment of what we're gonna do today. So we're gonna dig into your decision-making DNA. So I've got 4 different styles, and I wanna see which ones resonate with you. After each, you're gonna give me a number from 0 to 100%, but you only get 100% across all 4, okay?
Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
Wait, 0 to 100%? You mean not 0 to 100 for each one?
So you get 0 to 100 for each one, but you only get 100% total across all 4.
Okay.
And the answer is no, I can't give them all to you before you give me your numbers.
Oh, okay.
You get one at a time. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So here's the first one. It's called the feeler. It's a values driven leader. So this is the leader who asks beyond the revenue and profitability, what does this do for the people and the community? So when I'm making strategic decisions about which contracts to pursue or how aggressively to push operational challenges, I ask myself, beyond the numbers, what does this do for the people at Lenita and the broader Buffalo manufacturing ecosystem? When I'm driving change management and continuous improvement in an industrial plant, am I empowering workers and creating genuine revenue opportunities rather than just extracting more productivity? If I'm deciding between a high revenue contract that would strain my workforce with unsustainable overtime or compromise safety versus a more moderate opportunity that builds capabilities sustainably, how much weight do I give those human factors? Given that I'm manufacturing critical infrastructure for dams and hydroelectric facilities where failure can have catastrophic consequences for communities downstream, when I'm making operational or quality decisions, how much does the responsibility to protect public safety influence my choices, even when it might cost more or slow delivery? Okay, Sean, how much does that resonate with you?
I would say there's elements of that resonate with me very strongly. The first one being when I first started with the COO role and growing it, one of my leading drivers behind going and getting work was to make sure I retired the guys that I hired. So, and creating jobs, it wasn't about the amount of money. Look, you don't go and sit in a turnaround for 5-6 years because you're money driven.
That's right.
Because there's no bonuses, there's no significant raises. So you're driven by something much deeper and much more real than just the dollar amount. So creating a sustainable, healthy business in my hometown is a huge driver. I was born and raised in Buffalo. So now that we have a younger workforce, it's making sure that we're able to offer really, really good benefits and make sure they're employed long term so we can take care of these guys. So that's why when we set up work through 2030, 2031 or whatever, I could turn
Hmm.
around and be like, hey, look, guys, you guys are good for the next 5 years. Even if I'm not here tomorrow, I know that this that lives beyond me. And so
Awesome.
that is always my mentality. So it, I mean, it's hard
What's
for
your
me to put
percentage? Well, you got to put a number on it for this exercise.
60%.
60%. All right. That leaves you 40% for the next 3. Okay. Here we go. The next one is called the planner. It's a strategic visionary. So this persona thinks about compounding effects across multiple future scenarios. So when I'm making strategic decisions about Lenita's direction, which markets to target, which capabilities to build, I ask myself, What are the second and third order effects across multiple futures? If infrastructure investment continues through federal programs like the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, does my capacity expansion and workforce development position me to capture that growth? If the hydroelectric industry shifts toward modernization and retrofits of aging dams versus new construction, does my product mix and engineering capability adapt? If supply chain disruptions or material cost volatility continue, am I building supplier relationships and inventory strategies that create resilience? If workforce demographics in Buffalo manufacturing keep shifting with retirements and skill gaps, does my HR strategy build talent pipelines that sustain through 2030 and beyond? Are today's decisions creating compounding advantages, client relationships that generate repeat work, operational improvements that scale with value, workforce capabilities that enable increasingly complex projects, versus optimizing for this year's profitability in ways that might constrain future growth? So, Sean, what's your percentage? How future focused are your decisions?
They're future focused in the sense of of the product that we're working on now. And that's because of where we came from. So my thinking of compounding other industries and taking on other product lines. And I mean, I'd say I don't really think about those things too much to this point. Now that we're going to have this backlog, and we're planning to handle these 3 new projects we just got and that are going to carry us. I'm sure over the next couple of years, I'll be move into a space to be thinking there. But as of right now, I don't know, like 7%.
Okay, 7%. All right, that's a nice odd number. Good
Yeah.
job. Here we go.
I want to leave myself 33% for these other 2 because I don't know.
All right, that's good. And I'm glad you're doing the math. All right, here's the next one. It's called the counter. It's a challenger of assumptions. So this is the person who questions whether the conventional industrial management playbook is even right. So when I look at how most industrial manufacturers operate, I ask myself, are we following orthodoxies that don't actually serve companies well? The industry assumes sales and operations should be separated, that leaders should come from certain functional backgrounds, that executives should project purely serious business personas, but I'm integrating commercial and operational leadership. I came up through sales and HR, not just plant management, and I'm maintaining a visible professional acting career alongside my COO role. What if Lenita's turnaround came precisely because I brought unconventional perspectives, sales and client relationships informing operational decisions, performing arts discipline, shaping communication and leadership presence, willingness to challenge, that's how we've always done it thinking. What assumptions about how industrial manufacturing companies should be led could I challenge to create better outcomes? Yeah.
I love this one. Unconventional. So when I started here, this is heavy steel fabrication, blue collar. I have a much warmer, friendly demeanor. And I was always told, you got to be tough. This is a tough man's game. You got to be hard and blah, 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 blah. And so people saw me as soft. And so it wasn't really welcomed when I first started here. But I knew it would work long term. And I knew what was sustainable is to have more relationship driven business than having this top-down autocratic style. Lenita is where it is because I went rogue in a lot of ways. I just went and did it. And so when it comes to being unconventional in fresh ideas and new ideas and doing things that are completely, from left field, I'm a huge believer in it. So out of the 33%, I'll take 20, 23% of it.
23%. My man likes these odd numbers. That's all good though. I like that you're giving me the odd numbers, but I see what you did there to give yourself that last little percentage. But here we go. You ready for the last one?
Yeah.
Okay. It's called the data driver. It's the evidence-based decision maker. So this leader wants quantitative validation before making major moves. So before making operational investments or pursuing significant contracts, I ask myself, what data validates this decision? What kinds of analysis tells me what types of products produce the best margins? Which clients create sustainable partnerships versus one off transactions? Which operational improvements actually translate to profitability versus just create activity without results? Do I track leading indicators like quote to close ratios, project profitability by type, operational efficiency metrics that predict whether I'm building sustainable growth versus just increasing volume? When I secured work through 2030, what metrics gave me confidence that pipeline is solid versus optimistic projections? But I also recognize the paradox. How do I quantify whether my change management efforts are genuinely shifting culture and building capability versus just getting compliance? What qualitative signals from my plant floor, from client conversations, from the way my team approaches problems tell me whether Lenita's transformation is deep and lasting versus surface level? How do I balance making strategic decisions grounded in financial data and operational metrics while recognizing that some of my most important competitive advantages, like client trust, workforce commitment, the reputation I'm building in a specialized industry, can't be easily measured, but ultimately determine whether my turnaround sustains? Okay, what's your number?
I'll leave it at 10% because I do like to use data. Look, a lot of what I've done has been from gut because we still don't have a lot of processes and procedures, because we're still in a lot of ways that, that smaller mom and pop shop thinking, guys wearing many hats, more gut instinct type of thing. And especially now that I've had 14 years of industry knowledge and experience, are just within head. And so I use data a way of confirming or affirming that what I'm thinking is accurate. So I use it to check myself. I definitely use data to check myself because I could be wrong. So my gut is definitely wrong from time to time. And so, before I go in, or if I look at a large contractor, I say, okay, this is how many hours, how we're going to work this. And look at the data so I understand exactly what's going to need to go into it before I sign a contract, before I finish the bid. But
Fantastic.
I leave it at 10% because I use it more as a check.
All right. So you are 60% feeler, 7% planner,
Yeah.
23% counter, and 10% data driver. Sean, thank you so much for participating in that. And thank you so much for being on the show with me. Would you tell the audience where they can learn more about you and more about Lenita?
Sure. You guys can learn more about Lenita at our website. It's www.lenita.com. Regarding myself, you can look at my LinkedIn. You can call me. You can email me. You can look at my IMDb page.
There you go.
You can see my Instagram. So yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Yes, and for our listeners, if this conversation made you think about what unconventional backgrounds or experiences might actually be strengths rather than distractions in leadership, I'd love to hear from you. We want you to subscribe, share, rate, share with someone in manufacturing, and keep the conversation going on social media using Dynamic Decisions Podcast. And until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep leading with purpose.